1964, I and 3 African American men walked into a large rally, and it was on Stone Mountain in Atlanta, Georgia. And Stone Mountain was known for the Klan. It used to be the headquarters of the Klan, and they had a lot of rallies up there, and this rally was really no different. We walked in, and suddenly there were 10,000 people there. And the people talking were George Wallace. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was the governor of Alabama, who swore on his grave that he would not ever have integration in Alabama. And then also the ex-governor of Mississippi, Ross Barnett, who was head of the police state of Mississippi. And so this was a kind of hardcore rally, and there were 10,000 people there. And as we walked in, the whole place got completely quiet. And all of a sudden, this large white woman stood up on a chair and yelled, "Kill the niggers!" And all of a sudden, I got separated, and everybody, the whole place went ballistic. I mean, 10,000 people with their violence and their rage was intense. And I actually don't remember a lot of it. I now have this memory of it. It was like being in my head in a beehive. And it was like this intense, furious buzz. And people started picking up the chairs. They were sitting on metal folding chairs, you know, like in a big stadium. And they started hitting us with them. And I got separated. I was the last one in. There were people behind me, but they didn't come in. And I got separated off to the side, and people were hitting me with chairs. And I had what they call nonviolent training, which is they teach you what to do when they start attacking you. And the thing that I remembered at the moment was to take my glasses off and cover my head like this and crouch over to try to protect myself. And I've had glasses since I was 6. So when I take my glasses off, I'm either going to sleep or I don't think I'm going to get out of that place. And so I remember thinking, well, this is it, you know. And so as I was crouched over, some guy, white guy, grabbed me. And some of this is from what he said in the papers, but apparently he was yelling, "Act like white men," to the men that were hitting me. And he took me outside, out the way I had come. And the next thing I remember is sort of standing in the sun going, I guess I'm alive, you know. I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you think you're going to be in a car wreck or something. It's like, oh shit, yeah. So it was just like I went into this really intense daze, and then when I was outside, I started by feeling the sun. And that guy actually went back in, and he pulled some people off, the 3 African American men who were there, and they were being beaten, pummeled. The cops, there were a bunch of cops there, and luckily it was Atlanta, because if it had been in Mississippi, this wouldn't happen. But the police actually went in and helped pull off people from the black guys, and the white guy that helped me also did that. And some of the police were injured, so that tells you something about how violent and pissed off everybody was. And they went out the other way, and one guy had 16 stitches in his head, across the top of his head. He said he went out and bought a gun. That was his first response. He said he'd spent 2 years with a gun, hating white people. I didn't blame him. But, you know, it's just, I just went into some sort of, you know, coma and shell. That's what I did. But, you know, so I mean, it brings up a lot of stuff, this kind of abuse and seeing this kind of abuse, and it does make you want to lash out, for sure. But I just think it only perpetuates the insanity. And so that's that story. And it's always kind of makes me tremble because like I said, for many years I wasn't even able to talk about it, and here I am talking about it. So, you know, people have said to me, well, why in the hell did you go into a stadium like that? You know, I mean, 3 black men and a white woman, it's like, let's wave the red flag to the bulls or something, you know. But the truth is that one of the things that nonviolence is about is showing the structure that's underneath what's happening. In other words, in that rally, it was 4th of July. They were acting like it was a picnic, right? It was a big rally with these segregationists, and everybody was there, and they were all, you know, waving their American flags and their Confederate flags and everything. And the state of Georgia, it just happened. Well, when we went, it showed what was really there, which was a bunch of people that were full of hatred and were very violent. And without us being there, it just would have gone on. It would have been like 4th of July, like usual. And so that's part of what nonviolence is about. That's part of why when people went into Mississippi, which was far worse than Georgia, and literally was a police state, half the Klan members were police officers. So, you know, and I'm acting like the Ku Klux Klan, which was the hooded guys that, you know, whenever an African American was at all uppity or at all anything, tried to vote, tried to do better, they would go in and use violence to either lynch them or run them out of the state or scare the hell out of them. So when they say like Jim Crow, you know, I'm sure you've heard about Jim Crow laws and, you know, the Jim Crow system. It sounds sort of benign. It just sounds like there's a bunch of laws where, you know, you have to drink in a colored fountain and not in a white fountain and stuff like that. But you have to know that this was a complete system of separation and racism, and that underneath it, just right underneath it, was supported by violence. And that is also what the case of what happened with me at the rally. So I don't think that it's really hard to communicate this because, you know, people, you read about it and you hardly read about it. I mean, I don't think most textbooks and stuff like that, as far as I can tell, most of the younger people I've talked to, they go, I had no idea, you know. And so it's like there's a way that's never been made personal in a way that's made sense to people, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. And, so that was that day, and I did survive, and 20 years later I talked to a couple of the guys that had been there, one of the ones that had gotten the stitches in his head, and he too hadn't talked about it. And you know, it's like the stories of the Vietnam veterans that come back and can't talk about it. You know, somebody says, how was the war? It was fine, you know, and or they just won't talk about it. And for some reason it was very difficult to, I felt like most people didn't get it at all. And it was, you know, it brings up a lot for me whenever I do talk about it. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was the group that I worked with in 1963 and 64. I want to tell you a little bit about the background of that organization, because it's really cool, and it was basically student-led and student-run, and it was a young organization. In 1960, for those of you who may know this, there was sit-ins started throughout the South, predominantly in towns where the black colleges were. At that time in the country, most black people, especially from the South, went to black colleges. There was a series of black colleges spread out through the South. And February 1st of 1960, there were 4 students from Greensboro, North Carolina, who went into a Woolworths and sat in. And it shook up all of the black colleges
and the white South too, but it started the movement. The movement had been starting, but this was like somebody actually did this. And so what happened was, from there, it spread like wildfire. People started sitting in all different places around the South. And I believe it was in April, a woman named Ella Baker, who was working at that time for Martin Luther King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. She decided that there should be a gathering, a conference of student leaders throughout the South that were interested in sitting in. So they did it in North Carolina, and they expected maybe 100 people to show up. 200 people showed up. And in that whole discussion, one of the questions was, should they just have their own organization, or should they have an organization that was under SCLC, which was basically led by older, not really old, but 30s and up, black ministers was basically who was in SCLC. The primary one being Martin Luther King, who was a wonderful guy, but he was older, and it was a different form of leadership, I would say. And so at this meeting, Ella Baker, who SNCC people consider kind of the mother of SNCC, suggested that the students form their own organization and that they not be under the aegis of SCLC, but they form their own organization. And out of that, SNCC was born. And thank God she said that, because what happened was it was really youth-led. It was not older people with worries about what people think and all that jazz. It was young. And it was totally friggin' cool. I mean, it was so cool. And you could just feel, I mean, there were some older people that you know, were part of it, but they were the people that wanted the kind of action and the kind of activity and the kind of radicalism, natural radicalism that young people have. And it was awesome. So out of that was an organization formed, and then a lot of leadership from that went on into the civil rights movement between 1960 and, say, 1963. And a lot of that was sit-ins, and that was the stuff that was publicized the most, and all through the South. In Nashville, there was a huge movement, and you know, that happened. But the other thing that SNCC did was they started doing grassroots organizing in the police states of the South, and that was the really hard, deep core states, and primarily Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. And they sent organizers into these small towns to stay with people and find local leaders and build a grassroots movement. And a lot of it was around trying to get the vote, because at that time in the Deep South, no black people could vote. The Deep South, in some communities it was predominantly African American, but a lot of places it was like 30–40%. It was a big proportion, and nobody was allowed to vote.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was like a moment or something that kind of radicalized you as an activist, that took you from going to speaking events to becoming really involved, or?
Yeah, I have this sort of weird path, and I actually thank God for it, because I think it was almost an accident that I got in the movement. It wasn't, I was going to a college, Connecticut College for Women. This is 1962, I did my freshman year. 62, 63, and I hated it. And I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Mona Lisa Smiles, but it's like the gist of the movie is that at that time in our society, women who went to good colleges basically went there to get a good husband, you know, and and never to talk about a damn thing. I mean, they didn't even want to talk about art or, you know, it's like this whole sort of, you wanted to become the good social wife. You know, well, that was not my program. I mean, it just wasn't. So I didn't like the school. I didn't fit in. Luckily for me, Connecticut College had an exchange program to an all-black school in the South, Spelman College. It's the women's part of the Morehouse is the male African-American college, and Spelman is the female one, and there's 2 or 3 other colleges that are all part of this complex down there. And so I decided to sign up because I couldn't get my act together to get the hell out of Connecticut, so I went to this. And so a week and a half before I left, I was setting up my train reservations to go down to Atlanta. I thought Atlanta was like 8 hours out of New York by train. It's 24. And I suddenly realized that I was going into the deep South and freaked out. And anyway, it was very, it was pretty ignorant. You know, I didn't really know. And about a week after I got there, the 4 young girls were killed in Birmingham. And Kennedy was killed during that time. And so that's really how I got into the movement. And so luckily for me, it was a great experience. I mean, I'm so grateful to it. And at about November, I think it was, the Atlanta movement broke out. There was a time when they had sit-ins, you know, to desegregate the lunch counters and everything. And so it would happen at one area and then it would happen at another. It was sort of like different brush fires all over the South. And it had already started in Atlanta, but it was in a lull when I first got there, and then it started up again. And so we picketed some restaurants, and I got arrested and spent some time in jail. And you know, so that's how I sort of slid into it rather than, it wasn't, I really didn't go there to save anybody or anything like that. I would go to speeches, or my parents were liberal. I think they wished that I wasn't going, but they let me go. And I went back to Mississippi. I went back to the South in the summer of '64, and they tried to bribe me with a trip to Europe to not go, and I basically said, fuck you, and went, and you know, so there were differences there, but that's how I got into it. And what I found was not just protest and, you know, what I found was that empowerment. What I found was this core in myself that came so alive, and I was surrounded by these alive people. I mean, most people, we knew it was dangerous. It wasn't like, you didn't have to know shit to know it was dangerous, but there was something about it. It was like, there's something about, I know I might get killed, but this is really important, and this is important to me. And I'm gonna put my safety aside, and I'm gonna do this. And let me tell you, I mean, that is, I don't even know how to explain what that does to you inside. It changed me forever. So that, you know, now I'm just trying to get free. I'm trying to get free of myself, and I'm trying to help society a little bit, but mostly just be free inside. Because I saw what freedom could be. I saw what being alive and caring about things and not caring about materialism and all the bullshit stuff, and not wanting to do stuff for my parents and wanting to do stuff for what society said I should be doing, you know, none of that. It was, this is right. And where I was lucky is that there was a movement. So it is harder today in that it's more, unfortunate. I mean, the most movement I've seen is Obama, which is one of the reasons I like it. I can't believe there's young people that are actually, you know, getting excited about this guy. I mean, that to me, that's a reason to like him right there. It's just that there's some movement, you know. And you talk to some of those young people. I met a couple of people that were staff people. You could see it in their eyes. They were like juiced. I mean, they were just like, this is I'm going to Ohio, you know. I'm going to do this stuff. And it just is a different feeling. You feel like you're making a difference. And it's not so much just, it really, from my perspective, it saved me rather than other people. And along the way, we made some change. But it took all my, you know, I came from a very dysfunctional, sort of sterile intellectual world. That was what my parents, like, college was the only thing in the whole world that anybody should care about. And they meant well. They loved me, that was how they thought, you know, that's what they valued, so that's what they wanted from me. They took all that and just blew it all up, and just blew it up. I mean, I didn't finish college and everything. I didn't have the guts to drop out, which in hindsight, I wish I had, but I didn't have the guts to drop out. I don't know, you know, you know, it's a very live thing to find something that matters to you so much that you'd either die for it, or at the very least stand up to your parents for it. You know, that you're gonna do it anyway. And so, I mean, I think that's one of the values for gay people of coming out, is that they have to differentiate themselves from their parents, that they, and society. They have to do something that is not socially acceptable, quote unquote, even though I know there's movement, you know, but still, it's, you know, it's walking over that line. It's all in the same thing of being what you believe, and saying, I'm gonna do this no matter what anybody thinks of me. And I'm gonna do this whether they kill me or not. And it was rarefied air, man, to be surrounded by people who had been shot at and beaten and all that stuff, and it's all drama, but they knew they had a center in themselves that was, did you see it, Nelson Mandela? You see it in the Martin Luther King, you know, Martin Luther King knew he was gonna die. Oh, you know, you see it in people who have stood up. And they know that their short years are worth 85 times what our long years are. And I believe that. I believe that. So. Yeah.
What do you think about the use of the N-word by African Americans, and do you think that has an effect on stopping or eliminating racism?
Well, you know, when I was at Spelman, if anybody called me the N-word, I was totally complimented. I mean, I took that as I'm in, you know? So, you know, and I loved it, you know? So, I mean, I just want to say, you know, I have a lot of odd, you know, anyway. But, so, in that sense, I think I understand, to a certain extent, what it means within African American culture. That's how I feel, is that I got some understanding of that, and that it's a term of endearment within that, similar to how gay people would say queer or something like that. That it's taking the name of oppression and turning it and sort of depowering it and using it as something else. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because, you know, here I am, white, talking about this, so, please, I mean, so, on the other hand, and I don't think that America, white America, has ever understood that. I don't think that they have any comprehension of the difference, and so they think it's racist. If a black person can use it and a white person can't, they think that's racist, which I just find absurd. I mean, that is just fucked. I mean, it's just, makes me, I could go on for a while about that, as you can tell, and I curse a lot. So, but, so when Imus came along, or, you know, Michael Richards or anything, I think it's terrible for white people to use it. I think it has this historical context that when white people say, well, black people, it's a totally different deal. It doesn't have anything, it's apples and oranges, it's completely different. So, I'm more down with that than I am with bitches and hoes, if you want to know the difference. So, you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, I feel like that's something that should be decided within the African American community. I don't feel like white people have a right to say whether that can be used or not. I think that's something for African Americans to decide. And I just think it's a completely different deal. So, does that answer you? Yeah. So, And there's one other story I'd like to tell you that's related to a friend of mine that I got to know, probably 15 years ago. And she was born in Greenwood, Mississippi. And she came from a very poor family. And on her 11th birthday, one of the things she did sometimes was she would babysit for white families. And she had this one little girl that she babysat for, and she went to, on her birthday, they said, oh, we'll give you $5 for your birthday and for babysitting today. And she went to this big fancy house, and the white woman, the mother, then said, I want to take you upstairs for a minute. And she actually took her and pushed her into this room where her husband was, and the man raped her. Still. And part of the purpose of telling that story is that when you hear the words Jim Crow, and you hear the words of what it used to be like, you hear so little of what it really was. There was violence that held these things in place. It was like this whole system. And a lot of it, part of that system was that white men thought they could do anything to black women that they wanted. And that was largely true because it was a police state that supported the whole system, there really wasn't anybody to call. She couldn't bring charges against this guy because she told me 50% of the black young women that she knew had been raped by white men. And so this is the system that was. And she went on to, a wonderful woman, she went on to be a prostitute for a couple of years, and then SNCC arrived. And she first started following the SNCC guys because she thought that they would be good tricks. And cracks me up. You'd have to know the SNCC guys to know that they would never. That wasn't their shtick. And not that they weren't into women, but I mean it just. Anyway, so she followed them into the SNCC office, and that was where she saw her first African American woman at a typewriter. She ended up getting involved in the movement. She was arrested. She was, a young leader. She was like 16, I think, at the time. And then eventually, SNCC found her some people in the north in Wisconsin that helped her go up there. And her mom got killed because she was so active. They burnt down her house, and her mom died in that fire. And she left Greenwood and went to Wisconsin and ended up getting a PhD and writing a famous play that was on Broadway, and it's called From the Mississippi Delta. And the purpose of these stories is to try to explain a little bit about what it was. And I know all this seems like ancient history, and I've heard white people say, black people should just get over it. But what I can say is that it was only like a generation and a half ago or something. It was my age that we were there. SNCC was started by about 20 people, and they literally changed this country. And I know a lot of credit has been given to Martin Luther King, and he deserves a lot of credit. But it was also the field workers that went into these police states and risked their lives and set up grassroots organizing and freedom schools and all this stuff in the state of Mississippi that drove the country to changing the laws and opening up the state. And then you asked about the heritage that this leaves. And if I were talking about my parents or I guess it would have been my parents or my grandparents who had been in Auschwitz and who had suffered the Holocaust. And I'd say, well, this is 2 or 3 generations ago, but it's really affected me because it was such a horrible thing. I feel like white America can hear that, but I feel like white America has a really hard time hearing that those same kind of effects from a system that was, I don't think it was the same as the Holocaust, but it wasn't any damn good. And that it's just like there's no credence. I just find it stunning that there's just no allowance. There's no, the legacy of racism is alive and well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I really believe that. And it's not to say it's not different, but it's alive and well. Thank you. Go ahead.
What ended up happening to those 3 gentlemen afterwards? Were they harassed by?
Well, they were one had the stitches in his head, and they got out, and then they continued working with SNCC, basically. 2 of them were freedom singers. One of the things that SNCC had, which was a really effective, it was 6 different times then, because a lot of college campuses had what they call Friends of SNCC chapters that on the college campuses to give support for the work in the South, and that's a lot of how the money was raised. I mean, the SNCC workers were living on $10 a week, so I mean, it wasn't like big bucks here, no corporate jobs, but so they went on and continued working in the movement basically. And freedom singers were this group of 4 or 5 singers that went around to the north and sang songs and talked about what was happening in the South to educate people up there so they would be supportive and people would know what was going on.
No, turn me round, turn me round, turn me round, ain't gonna let no injunctions on it. Turn me round and keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Well, the songs are a very important part when they actually relate the story of the movement and what's going on. And right now, we as a group are using these songs to spread the movement to the northern part of the United States.
If we were truly going to try to deal with our racism, and this is, anyway, I feel like most people would weep for about a week, at least. That we would look at what we have done and what we have gained from racism. And, the wealth of America was primarily built on slavery. And I think that we would weep. And that doesn't mean we lay down and have African Americans walk all over, it doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that from the heart, there's atonement to be done. And I think that most white America will not even cop to that at all. And that's why if you bring up slavery, they go, it's over. It was a long time ago. You bring up Jim Crow. That's history. They're over. They ought to be over that by now. Anyway, and so I think it's subtle. And for instance, the penalty for crack is like really severe. The penalty for white powder cocaine is minor. Black community, white community.
Heard about it like that.
I mean, honest to God. And why are most African Americans in? I mean, I don't know this statistically, and I should probably find out, but my guess is at least half of them are in there for drug abuse, drug-related charges. It's bullshit. But most white people don't even, it's not even something that they think about or know. It's bullshit. And they're actually trying to change those laws now because it's so blatantly fucked. But nobody thinks about it. Nobody sees it. It's just, I mean, the whole prison thing is just, it's appalling.
Tell us, like, all of these stories, like, these experiences that you've had, which one do you think made, like, the most impact on you, like, changed you more, like, as a person?
There were a lot of open heart experiences that I experienced in the movement, and I would say that those were, the one that I'm thinking of is that, I have to give a little background, but
What the grassroots organizers found was that they would find leaders and they'd start developing kind of a organization. It was all, you have to know that like the Klan was out there and literally watching everything. And what they found was that as they found local leaders, they got shot. And Herbert Lee, there's just a number of people who got shot. Medgar Evers, it was just there's a long list of people who got shot. And nobody was prosecuted, and nobody paid attention to it. And it was just like, you could find 1,000 leaders and 900 of them would be shot, and as they just picked them off. And so one of the reasons that happened for like 3 years, and one of the reasons that they developed this program called the Mississippi Freedom Summer, which was the summer of 1964, was that they invited 1,000 people, young students, to come down and do programs in Mississippi for the summer of '64. I would say it was predominantly white students, and they were purposely bringing them in to call attention to the police state of Mississippi. And it was really, part of the reason was because they knew if somebody white from the North got killed, that would bring the attention of the nation to Mississippi. Now think about what that says about America. It says that the people that matter are these white college students and the local people who'd lived there all their lives, that had struggled, that had the bravery you can't even, it's more brave than you can even imagine to try to do leadership in Mississippi in 1960 as a black person. And they just get killed. And nobody gives a shit. And the white students come down, they're young, and in 1964, in June 21st, 2 of them disappeared, Andrew Goodman and Mickey Schwerner, along with James Chaney, who was the local person that they were with, a young, I believe he was 19 years old, African American, who was a local leader there. And, they disappear. And, it's terrible that they disappeared. But all of a sudden, the whole fucking world pays attention to them.
The Mississippi River.
If that had been Cheney, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have cared. And so it's really important to understand that in this country, how much more at that time, and still to this day, I believe, that white people's lives are valued. And it's really sad and really disgusting. So, but that's how SNCC was formed. And in 1963, I was lucky enough to go to the Black College and get recruited by James Foreman, who was then the executive secretary of SNCC. And I did sit-ins then. I was in the direct action arm of SNCC, and the rest is history. So that's the story behind SNCC.
And so we, at the training, the 3 guys that died, Schwerner, Chaney, and Goodman, and basically day 5 of Freedom Summer, and they disappeared and got killed, got shot by the Klan and the sheriff. And so, because almost all the law enforcement were in the Klan, Ku Klux Klan, which was the violent arm of Mississippi to enforce segregation. So I drove back to Atlanta because my dad had said he'd have a nervous breakdown if I went into Mississippi, and so I was going to work in Atlanta. And so See, it's like parent pressures too, you know. Anyway, I went into Atlanta, and there was a gathering of SNCC staff, and most of them were going into Mississippi. And at that time, everybody thought that they were gonna die by going into Mississippi, especially the staff, because the staff knew truly how violent it was, and to have somebody disappear that early into the summer, it freaked everybody. I mean, everybody was just like freaked out. And so, it's true, they were standing up to it, they were still gonna do it, but, you know, on a human level, it freaked us out. I mean, it scared the hell out of us. So there was kind of a staff meeting just before we went in, before they left. And there was this song that they sang. It's called Maybe the Last Time. And it goes like, maybe the last time, maybe the last time, maybe the last time, maybe the last time, but I don't know. Maybe the last time we sing together, maybe the last time, but I don't know. And it goes on. You eat together, talk together, pray together, blah. So there was this gathering, and this is like having 10 Nelson Mandelas in a room, okay? And so they're singing this song. And people are crying. And one woman got on her knees and started praying. And to my little 19-year-old white brain, it didn't compute. And I don't know how to explain this, but I was so moved by it, that people could be that real with their fear and also still go. And the air was like, it was just like rarefied air. I don't even know what kind of oxygen was in that room. It was unbelievably beautiful. And beautiful doesn't really do it because it sounds like this sort of hippie new age thing. It's just like so moving that I was beyond words. That's what was meaningful to me. The mass meetings, you know, people getting shot at and run up. We'd have these meetings and they packed this goddamn church into, I shouldn't say goddamn, they packed this church, you know, and people were on the rafters and yelling, and you'd walk in and everything, freedom, now, freedom. The whole place was just shaking with energy. People would sing. You walk out of there, you would face a fucking cannon. You didn't even care. It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. And I just never had experienced, that's what I'm saying. There was so much life there. And that's what I treasure.
Lay down my shuffling shoes, hey, fire out my door, and I ain't gonna shuffle no more.
That's what I treasure. There was a way of, what do we do when we're afraid? When we're afraid, you know, you shut down and you go drink, you know, or something. This was like coping. This was like dealing with it in a group way. I just never seen that. My parents aren't very emotional. They didn't deal with shit. You know, they all fought, but they never got anywhere. You know, it was a totally different way of being, and that's what I took away the most. Okay, I just answer what comes to mind. So, anyway, I'll be eternally grateful for that experience. I was always so disappointed in all the white movements that followed, because none of them had any music. You know, it was just like, it was so dead. You know, the other thing that happened for me, I was raised by atheists. My parents, especially my mom, I call her a fundamentalist atheist. You know, so I got exposed to a kind of wonderful spirituality that I had not seen. And I've been on that path ever since. So, but again, music was so much part of it. In one way I was brave, but I feel like I was not really the courageous one. And the reason for that is that local people in Mississippi, they've been raised with the Klan. They knew every black family in that goddamn town had an uncle, a great uncle, a grandfather who'd been run out of town or lynched. These were real things. These weren't, you know, and how they had the courage to stand up to these guys. Because, I mean, I knew it and I sort of understood it on one level. I hadn't lived there. And it was just a very, the local people were astounded. Yeah.
One thing that's really encouraging to me about your story is how young you were when this happened, and you were only 19. So I was just wondering, did you get discouraged by anyone or even yourself, or were you not taken seriously because of your age?
Oh, no, we were taken, actually, there were 13-year-olds that were in jail with me. So it was great. It was great. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Be that young and be that empowered, holy shit. I mean, there's nothing, you know that moment where you have, like, if you're at a rock concert or a dance or something and you just feel like you got juice all running through you and everything is right and you've forgotten all the things that are fucked up in your life and, you know, it's just right. It was very empowering to young people. And young people were the only ones who had the courage to stand up. And I, as bad as I hate being 63, I wish for you guys that you had a movement. And I wish for you guys that you will find what you really care about and do something about it. Because it is a transforming experience. And if that means standing up to your parents or your friends or whatever it takes, you gotta find yourself. You wanna look back and say, I was truly myself. You're a gift of God. Don't deny it. Whatever your interest or your heart, where your heart leads you. I mean, I'm starting to sound like, I don't know, a preacher, but I really believe it.
Do you think that it's like even marginally gotten better? Or like, I mean, that's like the first question. The second question is, if it hasn't, what do you think is really the best way? Because we've been talking about racism for a while now, and there's still no clear-cut way to really improve the situation because it seems so minuscule what you can do on your own personal end. And it's really hard to change people's psyches. And it seems so like...
It's even hard to change my psyche or
right.
my own psyche.
And it seems so difficult to change that one thing because it's so ingrained into them, right? And into people. And even to me, I'll admit it, I'm a bigot about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But what is really the best way to go about that if it hasn't gotten much better since your generation?
Well, I think it's gotten different in a lot of areas. I went down there with Indesha, and she had this like gathering, and there was this black woman judge, and I said, "Hi, Hattie, what do you do?" She said, "I'm a judge," and it took me, all I could say, "You're a judge." I couldn't, you know, because when we were there, it wasn't even an option. Right. So I mean, there have been a lot of changes. On the other hand, it's almost like it's morphed into something else as opposed to really gone away. I'm very heartened by Obama. I'm totally excited by him, and if for no other reason, I feel like to white America, they're seeing every goddamn day a bright African American who cares about people. You know, I think hopefully that's making some difference to the psyche. I think in 1954 when the Supreme Court had the Brown versus Topeka, the education where they said you couldn't segregate in education anymore. This guy, psychologist named Kenneth Clark, and he had young second or third grader black kids, and he brought them dolls. They were white dolls and black dolls, and he asked them which of these dolls is the best, and which of them looks the best, and which of them behaves the best. Almost all of them chose the white dolls. I mean, I find that heartbreaking. Second grade, that's, you know, it's been ingrained in that. And they actually did this just a couple years ago again, to almost the same results. And we're saying, why, you know? But I'm hoping that Obama, at the very least, is changing some of those second graders to where they would pick their own race doll. I wept about it. I mean, it just breaks, the whole thing breaks my heart, and I'm hoping that that's making some difference.
Even like in my set of peers or people I spend time with, there's like, now that I really think about it, there's racist comments in almost every second thing people say, just talking about normal things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And it goes under the radar. It's like brushed under the carpet or whatever. And I don't see how you can change that, how you can alter that.
If these are your buddies, at least your best ones, you need to say something. I mean, really, I know it brings up conflict. I know that is true. But, you know, what the hell are we doing hanging out with a bunch of guys who are making racist remarks? I mean, and I think there's ways to say it that are not like, you dumb shit, you know, not like that, but that are, you know, because what happens among white people is they assume that we're all racist.
Mm-hmm.
And so these jokes are made and these comments are made, and if we let them go by, their assumption is never challenged. And so, and I know it's hard to do. I mean, I don't say it lightly. And I think on on a small area, that's something that can be done. And then I think, and I encourage the other class too, is to find out what matters to you and to try to do something. I know it's hard. I know, guys. I know everybody's fucked up and we're all trying to do our lives, and you know, there's all this interpersonal crap and all of that. But try it, because I'm not kidding you. If you do anything, it makes you feel good. I did 3 hours of calling for Obama. I felt like fucking rat, you know, rah, you know. I mean, it just, you know, don't just, even if it's almost nothing, do something. And it needs to be something where your heart is. It should not be an intellectual event. It should be where your heart is, because that's what makes a difference. That's what will make a difference to you. And, you know, to stand up to your buddies or to say you want something, even to one of them on a one-on-one thing, that is so empowering. Because it sucks that you're sitting there listening to it. Not just because of black people in America, but for yourself. It's disempowering yourselves when you let this, if it matters to you, it's like eating shit. Excuse the French, but that's what it's like. It's like you're diminishing yourself so you don't bother somebody, even though they've bothered you, and they don't know it. So, is that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate all the questions, and I hope that I've communicated some of it. That whatever meaning, that you can take some meaningful piece away. That's what I would hope, that you can apply it to your own lives, because of not just for your sake. Because I don't know if I really believe in like going to help people, but I believe in by doing something that you believe in, you really help yourself. And that if we all helped ourselves to be more truly ourselves, we of this country would be really different. And so I hope that for all of you. I really do. So. Huh.
The Mississippi River. Lord, 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 Lord. The Mississippi River. Lord, 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 Lord. The Mississippi River. Well, you can count them one by one. It could be your son. Count them 2 by 2. It could be me or you. Count them 3 by 3. Do you wanna see? Count them 4 by 4. Oh well, into the river they go. Oh well, into the river they go. And you
can count them a 5 by 5 with their hands, and they don't come out alive. And their feet, and you can count them a 6 by 6 throughout the bar. In Mississippi they've got it fixed like good, and you can count them a 7 by 7 like swirl. The Mississippi River sure ain't a heaven and chain, and you can count them a 8 by 8. And we are thrown in because of an 8. And you can count them a 9 by 9. In Mississippi this ain't no crime. And you can count them a 10 by 10. And we wonder when the right will win.